How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? My name is Daryl Johnson, the new executive director of the Old Fourth Ward Business Association.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Juan Mendoza. I'm the president of the Old Fourth Ward Business Association. Thanks for joining us today.
Super excited about this opportunity to present a new member service, which is our technical support series. Now, what you are seeing is the first of many series that we'll have to support you as a business member of the Old Fourth Ward Business Association. Juan, what do we have?
Hey, we're actually focusing on the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. A lot of are familiar with during the pandemic. It was a stimulus package released by the government, and a lot of our business owners were able to take advantage of that. And we're here to just talk about specifics on criteria for forgiveness and the other questions that people can kind of have, and we'll go into details to kind of elaborate on the process to forgive.
That's excellent. That's really excellent. And like as a business owner, I've always had questions about that when it came to the PP loan system and how that works. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat box, make a comment, or feel free to reach out directly to us at director@o4wba.com. So Juan, without further ado, talk to us, PPP.
Awesome. I'm going to drive here, share my screen, and get this PowerPoint going for everybody.
Sure.
Awesome. Daryl, are you able to see my screen on your end?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Able to see it.
Awesome. And again, guys, this is excited to kick off our technical support series. Again, Paycheck Protection Program loans. Again, my name is Juan Mendoza, president of the Old Fourth Ward Business Association, but I'm also a commercial development program banker for Ameris Bank, which is focusing on commercial lending, whether you want to buy property, whether you want to acquire a business, whether you need a line of credit for working capital, a variety of different things just to kind of help your business operating cycle and help you grow and relieve cash flow. Feel free to reach out and we can discuss any of those products to kind of help you move along your business. Without further ado, I'm going to jump in here and kind of start off. I'll give a brief agenda. So we're going to go over the PPP loan overview, then I'll jump into forgiveness, and then I'll talk about repayment, and then we'll have an open Q&A for any PPP questions, as well as any general banking questions, whether it be lending questions or deposit services, anything like that. And again, feel free to reach out to me or Daryl on our contact info if you were not able to attend the live event, and we'll definitely be able to reach back out to you and discuss and answer your questions. All right, so the PPP loan overview, it's taking me back actually to some trauma here. Now, it was a good time. The first round, the banks and the government, the SBA, were not really aligned, and there was just so much coming out. The criteria wasn't set. But I remember staying overnight in the branches a few nights back to back, just trying to make sure getting funding for all our small business owners and literally just inputting it into the program and just trying to secure funds one by one by one. And Ameris Bank ended up doing about 9,000 applications and secure funding for 9,000 small businesses. So that was very good, a big win for us to be able to help the community and just partner with our small business owners during a time of very, very much uncertainty. All right, so there was 3 rounds, round 1, 2, and 3. I got the dates here. Most people have probably been forgiven for round 1 and 2. So if you're listening in, it's probably for round 3. But PPP funds haven't been available since 5/31/2021. No exceptions for anyone. So if you're still getting any solicitations or any correspondence saying, hey, PPP funds are available, that's definitely not the case. Please disregard that. And again, businesses were allowed 2 draws, the first draw and the second draw. Unfortunately, if you missed your first draw, or if you missed any draws at this point, there's nothing you can do. So I've gotten questions like, I only got one draw. Can I go back and on the back end and request that from the SBA? No, unfortunately, if you missed it, then you're not going to get that second draw. Or if you didn't get any at all, there's no backing into the program. So again, if you own multiple businesses, you were able to apply for PPP loans separately. So if you're in that category, feel confident that you can still get forgiven for both businesses, even if you're the same owner under one. Okay, so, lastly, one thing that I did find out from some good resources is that PPP funds will now be considered taxable income. So the government isn't going to penalize you on the tax return because you took advantage of this program by them. So I thought that was a great thing that they were able to decide and pass. Okay, so the PPP loan forgiveness. Businesses are required to apply for forgiveness no later than 10 months after the last day of the forgiveness period. So what is the forgiveness period? The forgiveness period is an option up to the borrower where they can decide whether they want their forgiveness period to be 8 weeks or 24 weeks, and that starts from the funding date. So let's say an example would be you got your funds from whatever financial institution you decided to use on February 25th, 2021. You can pick, if you want to do 8 weeks or 24-week forgiveness period. And what that forgiveness period is, that time frame that I used these funds. So if I got 100K, did I use these 100K in 8 weeks, or do I want to say I use them in 24 weeks? Totally an option to you. Really just depends on your situation. And if you want to reach out and talk about what would be the best fit for yours, please reach out. But yeah, so in this example, the funding date was February 25th, 2021. Let's say they chose a 24-week forgiveness period. So that means 24 weeks from February 25th is when that 10-month clock starts. So it's at the last day of the forgiveness period that you chose. And the same would be for 8 weeks. So a lot of people sometimes would just choose that 24 weeks to say, hey, I definitely spent that money at 24 weeks at the longest option, and I want to show that that's what I paid it at. Some people use it up in 2 months, and they just said, hey, I'm ready to apply now. I'm not going to wait, another 16 weeks to wait to apply or whatever it may be. So it really is just situational, but the option is 8 or 24. There's no in between. And again, reach out if you need help on your application. Now, how do we get forgiven? To receive full forgiveness, businesses must show they use the funds on covered expenses, and covered expenses are your payroll, your rent or mortgage, employee benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, and also utilities. So light, water, sewer, etc. on there. Now, the caveat is that at least 60% of the funds that you used needed to go directly toward payroll costs. So an actual payroll salary, and then the other 40% could go to eligible expenses. So the other 40% could have went to rent or mortgage, utilities, different things like that. However, it was okay to use 100% of those funds on payroll costs. So let's say I got 50K and I used all 50K to pay my employees. That's totally okay. The only caveat was at least 60% of these funds needed to go to payroll, and the other 40% could go to the other eligible expenses. There was a difference though in the first and second draw. So again, if you took advantage of both draws, you have to show on the second draw that you received a 25% reduction in revenue between two respective quarters in 2020 versus 2021. So just to backtrack, your first draw, the only stipulation was that 60% of those funds went to PPP. On the second draw, if you came back to the SBA, then they're saying, okay, you're eligible if you've at least received 25% reduction in revenue. And what that means is, I'm going to take first quarter of 2020 and first quarter of 2021. When you're comparing financials and revenue, you need to be able to show that there was a 25% reduction from that first quarter in 2020 to that first quarter in 2021. And then you just kind of, if you want to use different quarters through the year to kind of compare, that's kind of what you do. But at least one quarter, you had to receive a reduction in 25% in revenue there. All right. And then if businesses cannot prove the proper use of funds, so you don't have your documents or you just use them on things that weren't eligible, then you can find yourself in partial forgiveness or no forgiveness at all. So the government, SBA could say, hey, we think only 60% of those funds were properly used. We'll forgive 60%. And we're going to, term out into a loan, your repayment loan, for the other 40% of funds. So it's really situational. And then the repayment terms were on the applications. I know a lot of people may have skipped over them, and it's just a speedy process, but you're required to pay that back under the agreed terms that you signed on the application. And I will go over them to review those. Hey, Daryl, I'm gonna pause. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. All right, and now I'm gonna jump into a little bit more details outside of the loan forgiveness, which is the application process, right? You got the money in your account, you've used it for what you needed to use it for, and now you need to get forgiven. The best method is to reach out to the financial institution that helped you apply for the PPP funds. So whether it's your local bank or one of the online financial institutions that were partnered with this, best method is going to reach out to. Why? Because this helps ensure application is filled out correctly. and that, we're going through your proper documentation to make sure that, everything is there and it's going to give you the best chance at being forgiven. However, some institutions, they do now allow a direct application to the SBA's portal. I've attached a link there. So, sometimes people just wanted to streamline this process and just go ahead and directly let the small business owner apply on their own. Totally option up to you. And then to see if your institution is a part of this direct application process, there's a link down there as well. But again, I do advise to reach out to your contact at the financial institution that you applied for, just to ensure as much efficiency as possible. All right, so you found out where to go apply. So now we need to talk about what type of documents you'll need to be forgiven and what the SBA considers qualified documents. I do want to highlight that if your loan was under 150K and under, you're not required to submit the documents to the SBA. However, I do highly recommend that you send them to your financial institution so that they can have them in their archive software in case the SBA ever comes back and says, hey, where are the documents to show that these are qualified use of these funds? And they do suggest that you retain on the application for the PPP, it does say retain these documents for 4 years. And so again, even if you're not submitting them to your financial institution, you do want to hand these on hand in case you do get a letter from the SBA saying, hey, we want to review your application from 3 years ago. Where are the documents to show what you use these funds on? And this is very fluid, right? Biden just released a team to kind of go back and review these larger PPP loans for fraud. And we don't know if that's going to trickle down a year or two when they kind of get together and say, hey, now we have the capacity to analyze all the loans we did. You just want to be prepared because there's still uncertainty on what the future looks like in terms of the review of these loans. And so some qualified documents, you want to show your payroll journals. So a lot of people use ADP or Paychex or whatever third-party payroll service provider that you use, and you simply would just take the date range of your forgiveness period. So if it's 24 weeks, you take when you got the funds, when you started using them over that 24 weeks, and just show, hey, here's my cost for payroll over this forgiveness period. Bank statements work as well. They help to show, the money coming into the account, the money coming out, and just showing, again, what those uses were for. You're going to need a profit and loss statement if you got your second draw. This is going to show your reduction in revenue to be able to compare that quarter in 2020 to 2021 to show, hey, here's proof on my P&L that I received 25% reduction. Your rent or mortgage statements and receipts are great to have as well. Again, it just shows that this money did go towards what it was supposed to do, and you have your hard evidence there. Same thing with utility statements and receipts. Show what they billed you for, and then show the receipt of it being paid. You just want to have those on handy. You could also use 940 payroll tax returns to compensate, and that'll show what your payroll cost was for, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. And then if you're a Schedule C filer, then you just show that Schedule C there, and it's going to show your gross revenue, which is what was used for payroll for these type of business owners. And again, as much as possible is going to be great if you have some of this that can show that you know what you use these for. You don't have to have all of them, but if you want to reach out on if the documentation that you have is enough, please let me know, and I can review and say, hey, this looks very similar to the loans that I have been forgiven. I was able to get forgiven, and just kind of compare there. And again, I do want to highlight, I was involved in the funding process for this, as well as the forgiveness processes. So, my clients were coming to me and saying, hey, I'm ready to be forgiven. What do I need? Can you review my documentation? I submitted the application to the SBA, and then was able to rely whether you were forgiven or not. So please lean on my experience in this process. And to see the full list of eligible forgiveness documents, their SBA website, and I've included links on at the back end of this presentation, and you can go in and it'll literally break down what type of business you are, what type of documents would you need, etc. So it's a little bit more detailed, but I wanted to make sure they had a general overview to be able to apply to all different type of situations that businesses may be in. All right, so let's say you didn't get forgiven at all, or there was a partial forgiveness. And the way this could happen is a lot of financial institutions didn't qualify their business owners well enough, and they secured too much funds for them, right? So when you go to their financials and you go through it and you're like, well, you were only supposed to get 20K, but this financial institution said you were supposed to get 100K, and they dump all 100K into your account. Technically, you're only supposed to get 20K. That can put you into a situation, if you use those funds, where you're still going to have to pay that money back. So you just want to make sure that you kind of go over through and say, was I really supposed to get qualified for this? And if you weren't, then you can talk about maybe sending that money back, etc. But let's say you're either partially forgiven or not forgiven at all. The repayment terms are the same for your first draw or your second draw. That means there's going to be a flat interest rate of 1%. And if your loan was issued prior to June 5th, 2020, then you have to pay that over a period of 2 years. If your loans were issued after June 5th, 2020, then you have maturity of 5 years. Not sure what the deciding factor on that was, but that is the difference. It's only based on your date, not whether if it's your first draw or your second draw, just whether if it's before this date or after this date. Loan payments will be deferred for borrowers who apply for loan forgiveness until the SBA remits the borrower's loan forgiveness amount to the lender. So let's say you find yourself in a situation where you're getting close to your deadline and you've submitted your application and you're just waiting for the SBA to decide. They're saying that those payments within that period while the SBA is deciding whether you should be forgiven, that you will not have to, those payments will be deferred. So you're not responsible for them because of the time process. So there's no collateral personal guarantees required. So a lot of people thought, if I'm doing this loan, am I going to have to do personal guarantees, which if you're not familiar with means that you are also pledging your personal assets as long as the business assets for liability if you were to default on this loan, but that is not required for this type of loan. And neither the government nor lenders would charge small business any fees. So you should not have been charged at all to process this application with any bank or online financial institution. So if they have, please reach back out and say that they were not supposed to do that. And here are some resources, again, for the SBA website directly for extensive information on PPP. Again, it breaks down your first draw stipulations, your second draw requirements, what type of documents you need for if you're an LLC, if you're a sole prop, if you're a corporation. It'll break that all down for you and also give you a list of your partners if you're direct or indirect application process. But that was a brief overview. Definitely ready to expand on any questions you guys have or any general banking questions at this time.
Well, first off, Juan, thank you for that excellent amount of information that is much needed. PPP was definitely something that was provided for COVID-19 relief, and many of us needed that funding to support us during a hard time. Just have a few questions that I may need re-emphasizing. So did you say May 12th was the application deadline for loan forgiveness?
So good question. So the deadline was saying at May 31st of 2021, the PPP funds were closed. And so if you're getting any solicitation, so this is more to protect against fraud. If you're getting any solicitation for anybody saying, hey, PPP funds are still available, if you're getting any misinformation out in the field that's saying, if you missed your first draw or second draw, or if you missed PPP at all, that you're able to go back and secure funding, that's not the case at all. There are some programs out there that they're re-release, but PPP has nothing to do with those programs. The deadline specifically for a business owner to apply is, and I'm going to go back to share my screen here. The deadline that I was referring to, the example that I use is the SBA says you need to apply no later than 10 months after the last day of their forgiveness period. So again, no later than 10 months after the last day of your forgiveness period. And the forgiveness period is tiered. It starts from your funding date. So, and you were able to pick 8 or 24 weeks for your forgiveness period. So let's say I went to my bank and they got me funds on February 25th, 2021. That's my funding date. I, as a business owner, have to decide when I'm applying for forgiveness whether I want to choose an 8-week or a 24-week forgiveness period. It's There's no better or worse. It's more so what your situation is. So now I was processing these for our clients here. I would kind of just say, hey, do you think you used the money within 8 weeks, or do you think it took you anything after 8 weeks? Because then anything after 8 weeks, then we want to choose a 24-week forgiveness period, whether it's 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks. Anything in between 8 and 24 is going to jump us over to the 24 for forgiveness period. So that's kind of how I started that question. So if I choose 8-week forgiveness period, I have to apply for forgiveness 10 months after the end of that 8-week forgiveness period. So funding date 2/25/2021, 8 weeks for my forgiveness period, then 10 months from the end of that 8-week forgiveness period, and then you would just substitute the 24 weeks if that's your case. So you could have about a year and a half from your funding date to actually process this. Now, you start getting to a date where you either missed your forgiveness period or your forgiveness application deadline and you don't know, or you have one still going and you're still willing to apply. So some people, like I say, some people already went through this process and got it done out the way, but I know that there's still a lot of people that either A, missed their deadline due to miscommunication from the institution that they got them from, just them not communicating clearly to them, hey, your payment, your deadline's coming up. We took the initiative to reach out to our borrowers and say, hey, you need to get started on your forgiveness application, because you could run into a situation where, you're going to get past due here. And so that just, hopefully that clarifies a little more on when you need to apply by.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that answer. So another thing that I gathered, we talked about the first draw, right? Proof that 60% went to payroll and 40% went to rent, mortgage, benefits, or utilities, or 100% payroll. The second draw added the stipulation, or was the only stipulation was proof that there was a 25% reduction in revenue? And then did the third draw include those same stipulations?
Correct. So great question. So there was 3 rounds of PPP. So they kind of did one in the beginning, the end of 2020, and then the beginning of 2021. As a business owner, you're only allowed 2 draws. So sorry if there was confusion on the 3 rounds. I just wanted to give people some days to say, hey, if I applied in this, I was in first round. If I applied in this date, I was second or third. But as a business owner, you're allowed 2 draws. First draw, you got correct. The only stipulation was 60% on payroll, 40% on other qualified expenses. The second draw has that stipulation as well, but then they added on top of that and said, okay, if you're really in trouble, if the pandemic really affected you, you should have at least seen a 25% rate reduction in your revenue. And so we'll allow you to get a second draw if that was the case for you on top of the 60/40 stipulation.
Now, how are they calculating the second draw at 25% reduction in revenue when the first draw essentially was something that potentially fed into their revenue? Are they not including that amount?
Right. So the payroll, the actual amount that a business owner could qualify was 2.5 times the payroll, their monthly payroll. So if I had a payroll for a month of 10K, then I could apply for a loan for 25K, 2.5 times. That amount did not change in the second draw. If my payroll is still at 10K, then I can still apply for 25K, so long as that I experience a 25 reduction in sales between those 2 quarters.
Perfect, perfect. So, you know, thank you so much. And if anyone else out there has any questions, like I said, feel free to shoot an email to us at director@o4wba.com. And if you would like to do some type of in-person training with Juan Mendoza, also send those requests through the same email address, director@o4wba.com. This presentation will be presented live on YouTube. So feel free to visit our YouTube page. Remember to like and subscribe when you get there, and feel free to use this PPP training as, you know, a basic understanding of what is to come so we can be proactive. I thank y'all so much. Juan, I want to thank you so much for this time. Great presentation, and really excited to work with you as our president of the 044 Business Association.
Darryl, I thank you for your time as well, and thank you for all your hard work that you do to make sure new programs like this become in place and we can offer new services to our members that are very beneficial to them. And excited for our next session coming up on June 8th. And again, very excited to start this library on YouTube for people to access at any time. And for those out in the community, if you have any questions about banking, even general, whether it's deposit services, you know, your normal checking accounts, your credit cards, or commercial lending. So I work with all types of business owners where they're at in their cycle, whether you're starting up, whether you're maturing, or where you're growing, and whether you're maturing, just really depends. And if you're not ready for the loan because you're new or your finances aren't there, then we can talk about, hey, what do I need to get there, and different things like that. So I kind of help develop all types of business owners and where they're at in their stages. And one thing I do experience is people being discouraged because they don't think they're ready, or they want a loan and they don't have the financial, they're not prepared financially with their tax returns and all the documents that they would need. So we have that conversation on saying, hey, in the future, here's kind of what you will need to apply for a loan. And so I don't work with only people who are a ton of revenue and it's a slam dunk. We really try to cultivate and consult and partner with businesses to get them ready, because that's the end goal. And again, I focus on whether you want to buy a property, you know, a storefront or a commercial property that you want to stay in, whether you want to buy a business out, whether you need a line of credit for working capital, equipment financing, so like restaurants or construction developers, you know, that type of just all types of broad range I work with. Is just would need to sit down and talk about your business, learn about it, and see where you could use the most growth at, right? If it's your accounts receivables or accounts payables are delayed or too long, maybe we can inject some cash into that to kind of alleviate some of that pressure between those time periods. So again, I could go on and on. This is what I love to do. But I just wanted to make sure people know that is what my experience is really in, and to please lean on it. There's not a charge, you know, to talk to me. I'm always available, and just want to extend that invite to anyone.
Wow, what's your contact information?
Awesome. So my contact information for Ameris Bank is 404-240-1556, and my email is juan.mendoza@amerisbank.com.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. And hey, just like you said, June 8th, another technical support series coming to you. So we'll be looking for it on our YouTube page very shortly. Have a good one, y'all.